There comes a moment in every seeker's life when the veil thins. A moment when you begin to notice what others overlook. When you start hearing what others silence. When you begin feeling what others numb themselves against. At first, you don't know what to call it. Clarity, intuition, awareness. A widening, a remembering. But whatever it is, it begins quietly, softly, like a whisper in your heart, saying, "There is more truth, more depth, more reality, more to this world than the masks it asks you to accept." You don't try to see differently, you simply do. Your awareness expands, and suddenly, everything around you becomes transparent. And that is where the cost begins. Because the moment you start seeing what others refuse to see, the world stops feeling familiar. The conversations around you change. Your relationships shift. Your inner life becomes brighter, and your outer life becomes lonelier. You see the games people play, the ways they distract themselves, the illusions they cling to, the wounds they hide, and the truth they fear. You see the masks, the ego armor, the unspoken pain, the silent longing under everyone's eyes. And the more clearly you see, the more distance grows between you and the world you used to belong to. Not because you think you're better, but because you can no longer pretend. Swami Radha said, "Awakening is not superiority, it is honesty, and honesty is expensive." You begin to realize that most people don't want clarity. They want comfort. They don't want truth. They want reassurance. They don't want light. They want the warmth of their familiar darkness. And so your awakening becomes difficult in ways you didn't expect. You start sensing when someone is lying, even to themselves. You feel the shift in their tone, the tension behind their smile, the fear behind their anger. You notice when someone is avoiding their own reflection. You notice when someone speaks from ego instead of essence. You notice when someone is desperate for validation, but terrified of vulnerability. You see all of it. And you carry all of it, not because you choose to, but because your awareness is awake now. And here lies the cost. Once you see, you cannot unsee. You cannot go back to pretending. You cannot re-enter illusions that have already dissolved. You cannot return to the comfort of unconsciousness. Awakening is a one-way door, and stepping through it means losing the ability to blend into the world as you once did. You will sit in rooms where everyone is talking, but no one is truly speaking. You will feel heaviness in conversations that have no depth. You will sense emptiness in situations where others feel excitement. You will feel tired by noise and nourished by silence. You will feel the subtle dishonesty behind small talk. You will feel the spiritual exhaustion in environments built on competition. You will feel the disconnect between the soul and society. And you will wonder for a moment, has something gone wrong with me? But it hasn't. Nothing is wrong. Something is waking up. The cost of deeper sight is realizing how blind the world chooses to remain. And yet, there is another cost, even greater. The world will misunderstand you. People who have not seen what you've seen will project onto you. They may call you sensitive, too intense, too quiet, too withdrawn, too serious. But what they truly mean is, you see too deeply for my comfort. Your clarity becomes their discomfort. Your boundaries become their confusion. Your honesty becomes their mirror. And most people fear mirrors more than they fear darkness. You will lose people you never wanted to lose. Not because you walked away from them, but because they walked away from the version of themselves they saw reflected in you. People will drift. Some will distance themselves without explanation. Some will feel judged even when you speak with compassion. Some will attach their insecurities to your silence. Some will feel exposed just by being near you. Then comes the quietest pain of all, the pain of carrying truth alone. There are things you now understand that cannot be explained, things you can feel that others cannot, things you see unfolding that others are blind to. You try to share, but your words fall flat. You try to warn, but they dismiss it. You try to show them the path, but they are not ready. You try to hold the light for them, but they choose the familiar comfort of their shadows. And so, bit by bit, the universe teaches you a difficult but sacred lesson. You cannot awaken anyone. You can only embody your awareness. The light you carry is not a weapon. It is not a shield. It is not a teaching you impose. It is simply the consequence of seeing. And yet, awareness has its blessings too. In the space created by loss, silence, and separation, something new emerges inside you. Something steadier, clearer, stronger. You begin to trust your perception. You begin to trust your intuition. You begin to trust that your clarity is not a burden, but a compass. You start choosing environments that resonate with your inner truth. You start honoring the quiet voice within you. You start recognizing when the universe is guiding you away from what no longer supports your path. And slowly, you begin to accept the greatest paradox of awakening. Seeing deeply isolates you, but it also frees you. You are no longer manipulated by the illusions that bind others. You are no longer controlled by the expectations of society. You are no longer trapped in relationships built on unconscious patterns. You are no longer fooled by appearances. You see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. You see yourself as you truly are, not as the world once shaped you to be. And in that honesty, something miraculous happens. The loneliness that once felt heavy becomes spacious. The silence that once felt empty becomes sacred. The truth that once felt painful becomes liberating. This is the hidden gift behind the cost. Awareness takes people from you, but it returns you to yourself. Swami Radha said, "Clarity is not comfortable, but it is freedom." And freedom, even when it is quiet, is a beautiful thing. Still, there is one more cost. A deeper one. A cost no one warns you about. When you see deeply into life, you begin to see deeply into suffering. You see the patterns people repeat to avoid their pain. You see the childhood wounds behind their defenses. You see the fear behind their arrogance. You see the longing behind their anger. You see the exhaustion behind their confidence. You see the truth behind every illusion. And there is no judgment, only compassion, only understanding. But compassion can be heavy. Because when you truly see another suffering, you feel it, even if they don't. And yet, This too is part of your awakening. For awareness without compassion becomes cold. Compassion without awareness becomes blind. But awareness with compassion, this is where the soul begins to shine. When you see what others refuse to see, your heart quietly becomes a sanctuary, a place where truth can breathe, a place where silence becomes wisdom, a place where clarity becomes kindness. And that is where the transformation begins, not in the world outside you, but in the inner world that has awakened within you. But the journey continues, and the deeper cost and the deeper blessing is still unfolding. The deeper your awareness becomes, the more clearly you start to see that most people are not living their own lives. They are living the expectations placed upon them. They are living the stories they inherited. They are living inside roles they never questioned. They are living inside identities that were never truly theirs. And when you see this, something inside you breaks, not out of judgment, but out of compassion, because you realize how long you too lived in that unconscious sleep, how long you followed patterns without choice, how long you muted your intuition to keep the peace, how long you dimmed your inner light to fit into places that never deserved you. Awareness brings grief. Grief for the world, grief for others, grief for who you once were. But that grief is cleansing. It softens you. It humbles you. It deepens you. And yet, there is still another cost. You begin to see a truth that most avoid their entire lives, that the world is full of people who are terrified of their own depth, people who are frightened by the idea of sitting with their thoughts, people who will do anything to avoid silence, people who drown themselves in distraction, noise, drama, routine, addictions, and endless busyness, because if they stop, even for a moment, their inner world will rise to the surface. And so, people fear the very thing that could save them. You see this clearly, and for a while you try to help. You speak with gentleness. You guide with patience. You offer presence, compassion, truth. But often, people will reject the very clarity you offer, not because you are wrong, but because they are not ready. There is a point in every awakened soul's journey where they must learn this sacred lesson. You cannot save someone from a truth they are committed to avoiding. You cannot make anyone see what they are determined not to look at. You cannot force awareness onto a closed heart. You cannot open a mind that clings to its own blindness. This realization hurts, because your vision has expanded, but theirs has not. You see doorways where others see walls. You see possibilities where others see threats. You see solutions where others see problems. You see growth where others see danger. And in this difference, distances begin to form. You start withdrawing, not as a reaction, but as a necessity. Not because you no longer care, but because your spirit can no longer tolerate the noise. Your solitude becomes peaceful. Your silence becomes nourishing. Your inner world becomes rich. And the outer world becomes quieter. For a while, this solitude feels like the only place you belong. You begin slipping out of conversations that drain you. You start declining invitations that misalign with your spirit. You lose interest in gossip, drama, complaint, and superficial pleasure. You feel a subtle ache when you try to fit back into old circles, because nothing in you fits anymore. And eventually, this truth dawns. You did not outgrow people. You outgrew the version of yourself that tolerated less than truth. It is not pride, It is evolution, but the cost continues. Because the deeper your sight becomes, the more you see into yourself. Not just your light, not just your wisdom, not just your compassion, but also your shadows, your conditioning, your fears, your unfinished wounds. This is the part of awakening that is rarely spoken about. The radical honesty required to face who you are underneath all your patterns. You begin seeing the ways you once betrayed yourself to belong, the ways you abandoned your intuition to be accepted, the ways you silenced your voice to avoid conflict, the ways you shrank your spirit to stay safe. You see the moments you lied to yourself. You see the times you ignored red flags. You see the fears you inherited from your parents. You see the beliefs you absorbed from society. You see the coping mechanisms you built as a child. And this inner clarity can feel overwhelming, but it is also sacred. Because the more deeply you see yourself, the more deeply you begin to heal. Awakening does not just reveal truth about others, it reveals truth about you. And while this honesty is painful, it is the beginning of transformation. Swami Radha taught, "Light first illuminates the room you are in. Only then does it spread." Meaning, you must see yourself clearly before you can see the world clearly. And you must see the world clearly before you can walk it with wisdom. This process, this unraveling, this deep seeing, it strips you, it empties you, it reorganizes you, it purifies you. You begin to realize that sight is not just perception, it is responsibility. When you see the truth behind someone's behavior, you stop taking things personally. When you see the wound beneath their anger, you respond with compassion, not defensiveness. When you see the fear behind their avoidance, you stop chasing. When you see the insecurity behind their arrogance, you stop resisting. When you see the illusion behind their confidence, you stop comparing. A cost of sight is that you can no longer react unconsciously. You must respond with awareness, with intention, with depth. And that is harder than living asleep, but infinitely more rewarding. Still, there is one more cost, perhaps the greatest one of all. You begin to see the truth of impermanence, not as a philosophical concept, but as a lived reality. You see how quickly life changes, how relationships shift, how people evolve or remain stuck, how time moves with or without your permission, how nothing is guaranteed, how everything is borrowed. And yet, instead of sadness, something softer emerges: gratitude, presence, reverence. You feel more deeply. You appreciate more intensely. You cherish moments others overlook. You treasure the quiet. You honor the sacredness in small things. Awareness makes everything luminous, even endings, even loss, even solitude. And slowly, the cost transforms into a gift. Because while sight isolates you from the unconscious world, it connects you to the deeper world, the world beneath appearances, beneath ego, beneath patterns, the world of essence, the world of soul, the world of truth. You begin meeting people who feel familiar, even if you've never seen them before. People whose eyes carry the same light, whose silence speaks the same language, whose presence feels like home. These are the ones who see. These are the ones awakening. These are the ones you were always meant to walk with. And when you meet them, you understand why the journey required solitude. Your awareness was preparing you not to stand above the world, but to stand true within it. And in this truth, you discover the real blessing behind the cost. Seeing deeply is not a burden, it is a calling to live with integrity, to walk with consciousness, to speak with clarity, to love with discernment, to choose with intention, to exist with presence, to embody light in a world that hides from it. Because the greatest cost of awareness is also its greatest reward. You no longer live unconsciously. You no longer sleepwalk through life. You no longer seek validation. You no longer abandon yourself. You no longer fear truth. You see, and in seeing, you become free. Swami Radha said, "Light does not just show you the world, it shows you who you must become within it." And that is the real secret. The deeper meaning beneath your sight. You did not awaken to judge others. You awakened to transform yourself. You awakened to walk the path your soul has waited for. You awakened because you were ready, and because the universe needs people who can see. The cost of sight may be high, but the cost of blindness is far greater. And now that you see, you can finally live.